Welcome to the Sacred Path. Tonight's episode, we're going a little different direction. We will be speaking live, stream of consciousness, no script, no guides, only guided by divinity. Speaking about the reality of my situation, the life which I reside in, the challenges of living off-grid, tiny homes, my journey to Colorado, where I find my home today. I assure you, it's going to be an interesting journey. It certainly has been for me. As always, this is the Sacred Path. I am Rothi Midran Apkalu, your guide to humanity's divinity. Let me allow myself to provide a little background and introduction. Those who know me before this incarnation, this existence which I call myself, I resided in Chicago. Many kindred spirits and kind allies that resided there, and I was very blessed to live there, but I knew that it was time to move on. But as many people in Chicago, I did not have my own transportation. For in a city such as Chicago, having your own car is truly not required. This being said, I had no way of arriving at my destination, Colorado. I knew it was my destination because of the fact that the fates had provided that information for me. You see, a few years previous to this, when I was up visiting my mom in Wisconsin, I had befriended a kind gentleman who obtained land in this fair city and on this fair land, which I call home, that being Alamosa, Colorado. He and I befriended each other, and truly have nothing negative to say about him because he has provided me with the opportunity and the blessings to provide for the life that I currently reside in, that being living on the sacred lands, which I call Sacratinerus, and developing it into a community and a spiritual retreat. As I mentioned, I did not have any transportation or vehicle to get here. I have always lived in fate, as I stated before in a previous episode, and shall continue to do so because, quite honestly, it has not disappointed me as of yet. So, I stated a message to the universe using social media and whatever other tools were at my disposal, and messaged and stated as such that I knew my home was in Colorado, but I did not have a vehicle or a car of my own. I received a reply from a kindred spirit stating that they were planning to come up to get me and deliver me to my said residence. I took it with a grain of salt because of the simple fact that they did arrive on my door in Chicago. And it proceeded to tell me that they would be providing transportation for me to my destination. No fees, no obligations, simply because they were guided by divine fate and believed that it was their obligation to do so. Previous to this, I was working in a pretentious little restaurant in the Hyde Park area of Chicago called the Promontory. I knew my life was aligned to live and reside in the fates of magic. When I began working there, and the executive chef asked me if there were any other names which I was known as, because of the fact my given birth name, Kevin, had another gentleman that was working there at the time as well. I was on my way from Chicago, sweet home Chicago, to Colorado, the Mile High State. Although my current residence is higher than a mile high, I am presiding at 7,600 feet altitude and holding. The winter has been harsh to much of the country, but myself being an elemental mage, it has been fairly generous considering. We've had snow, but the moisture has been desired and, in fact, beneficial to the society around us, which most of our precipitation and groundwater coming from an aquifer that is underground and has been a dried up lake bed for some 500 million years. My journey here was an interesting one. It's had a wolf of theirs that had passed on. So I had determined that it was for the better interests of all that the wolf be given to the person who had lost their cub so that they would be able to heal, because I had my dog, Tyson, who still resides with me as a very majestic and wonderful creature. And so they came to my residence and picked up the wolf, and I resided here with Tyson. I've been here for approximately a year and a half's time, and as I mentioned in the premise for the show, tonight's focus is on off-grid living and sustainable living. There are many who speak of desire and dreams of living off-grid and have a skewed, if not delusional, perception of what it truly is. So tonight's episode, I am intending to set the record straight on what is truly required and what changes and adaptations are necessary for one to truly adapt to tiny home living, sustainable living, and off-grid living. Admittedly, I am not completely sustainable, not even close to, but much closer than most of those who live in the city. I live off the hands of fate, and it provides for my needs. Mind you, not as well as I would like them to, or as well as they should, but that is up to the hands of fate and my kind listeners to compensate accordingly. I have many at liberty, much higher quality than the filtered and fluoridated water which most of our country resides on. So again, it is a blessing and it is a challenge at the same time. The blessing being a much higher grade of water, the challenge being the fact that it requires transportation. Water is approximately 7.5 to 8 pounds per gallon, and if you do not have a vehicle of your own, which I do not, I'm blessed to have a colleague and friend of mine that has provided transportation for me. But for the first year or more that I lived here, I did not have any regular access to transportation, which is a beautiful thing because it provides you with the ability to connect to the society around you and the opportunity to be free from transportation expenses, which can be quite intensive, but it greatly limits one's liberty. I still have limited liberty, but I have many greater opportunities. Conflict at a challenge, at a cost. Many that I know speak of and fantasize about the reality of living in off-grid and living in a tiny home, and they believe that they will just be able to pick up and transport themselves to a alternate reality where they no longer have obligations and commitments and challenges. And while there may not be as many monetary and financial challenges to living off-grid, there definitely are monetary and financial challenges that are to be addressed. The land does not come free to begin with. I am blessed to have a kindred spirit that is allowing me to be caretaker of the land and make payments as the fates allow. Mind you, not anywhere near as prolific of a financial stability as I would wish it to be, and I leave that to my listeners and the fates to rectify that situation so that I may do proper justice to the situation which I live in. The costs for the land aside, there are greater obligations. The county, no matter where one resides, does not desire one to live traveling for water, so there is a well that is required. The aquifer to tap into it is over 400 feet deep, which costs several $1,000s. The water table to access into the normal water for the well system is well over 100 feet, which also costs several $1,000s, correction. And the other issues, building permits, technically they require one to reside in a residence that is over 600 square feet. Admittedly, I do not believe this is required for a functional life, as I am proving that it is possible to live in a residence that is much smaller than this, but again, I believe that is large. Again, that is simply living off faith. I have been blessed that firewood has been provided by kind friends, kindred spirits, and benevolent allies that have watched out for me in my time that I've been here. I've been blessed to befriend several people in the process of my residing here. My seeking transportation and the fact that I reside on the highway right on US 160 has provided me with accessible transportation, and it has provided me with the benefit and the blessing of meeting kindred spirits and kind folks that have not only provided me with transportation, but have blessed me with looking out for me and assisting and providing for my needs to a degree of meeting my functional needs, but not my meeting my practical needs, but not my functional needs. As I've already addressed, there are much greater requirements for a functional system. Well, water on the land, septic, insulation in the cabin, transportation of my own, of being sustainable and minimized and whatever. I recommend truly to reconsider, minimize one's life, optimize practicality to a greater degree than you could possibly even comprehend. Realize that it takes much greater financial and economic resources than you probably are able to understand, and that escaping the system is much, much more challenging than you realize. The system is designed to support itself. The land of the free is an illusion. Ruled by